We have two very special guests joining us today. Fanfare, drum roll, fanfare again. We have the one and only legendary Jamie Osborne, trainer, former jockey, and Donal McCabe, formerly the late Queen's Communications Secretary and racing fiend because he was Director of Communications at Ladbrokes before that. Welcome to you both. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
Recollections may vary on whether I was a racing expert ever, I think.
Donal's favourite ever deployed phrase, some recollections may vary. We love it.
I remember that very well. I don't mind.
We're very lucky to have Jamie because Jamie has got three runners today.
Yep, 3 runners this
So we are grabbing you in between, just before it all kicks off. You're looking very calm.
Such an honour to be on this immediately uber successful podcast.
We'll pay you later,
The
Jamie.
Roya and Kate Show.
We'll do that again, more genuine next time. But we're here at the parade ring, with owners looking nervously up at the screen to see if they've got a winner.
There's a rather important race going on right this very moment.
Donal, how's your horse
Donal's got
doing?
money on this one.
Back of the pack.
Nowhere.
Donal's looking quite dubious.
Donal's
So,
Donal's horse is not winning.
no.
For their serious faces,
So,
Roya.
well,
we've lost
Wow.
them. We've lost them to the
We've
race.
just had the first
Sorry.
race, the Queen Anne Stakes, which neatly segues into the fact that the racecourse stakes back to 1711, when Queen Anne rode out from Windsor Castle and declared the area ideal for horses to gallop at full stretch.
Right, she was.
Yes, it was in 1768 that the first royal meeting was held, and since then 12 monarchs have been patrons. Now His Majesty King Charles III has become the 13th monarch overseeing the running of the racecourse.
So this week, every day, except for Wednesday, the King's going to start the day's races with the royal procession carriages. Very well turned out liveried staff, and the horses are Windsor Greys and Cleveland Bay horses. Did you know that, Kate?
Yes, and they were in trooping. They were part of the trooping parade, apparently, trooping the colour parade at the weekend. So it's been like this for some 2 centuries, and one of the most supportive was the late Queen, of course, who had, I believe, I'm right in saying, 22 winners at Royal Ascot. Never missed a single meet.
I think it was just the
Did she
last
miss a
one of her
single-
reign she watched from TV at home. Donal, I
That's
remember ringing you about
right.
that.
I think the last time she was here was the Saturday in 21, I think.
Yes.
And you
in
were here
person.
for that.
I was more on a pleasure than working excursion that day,
So
but
we
I
didn't
was
ring you
here.
that- we didn't ring you that
Oh,
day.
I think I got told what the Queen was wearing, and you probably had some of my handiwork because I had to pass on that information.
Yeah, we need to know the brooches, the outfits, the...
Always my strong point, as you know, Kate. That was her last attendance, and then in 22, yes, it was television.
Right.
So how nice to be been there at the last Ascot that she was at.
Bittersweet, I suppose. Yeah.
Now, we've got Jamie with us, so I think we are perfectly poised to talk all things royals and racing, because as well as being a trainer, you were a former jockey, and you famously, royal sources tell me, the Queen Mother's favourite jockey. So let's kick off with that, Jamie. Why do you think you were Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother's favourite jockey?
I'm not sure I was.
Well, we're going to.
I've read that
that's,
too, but
that's the official line. I've written it, so let's play along.
I'm not totally certain that's true. No, I was honoured to ride for the late Queen Mother, sort of towards the latter stage of my career, and I don't know where that quote came from, but yes, it is something. If you Google it, does
Might
say
have
that
come
I
from the
was.
Sunday Times.
Maybe I made it up. I don't know.
What was she like? Because everyone always says she was a real character and had a great sense of humour.
She was amazing. Obviously, whenever you put her silks on, there was a real sense of honour. She had a real understanding of the sport, and I would say, in a way, a kind of almost an admiration for those of us that were doing it, because it's a rather stupid thing to do for a living. And but she had a real understanding of what it took. I mean, being here reminds me there was one amazing day where, after she'd had her 400th winner,
Wow.
the late Queen gave a lunch here for her to celebrate that fact, and all the guys that had ridden any of these 400 winners were invited, and of course they'd spanned over many decades, so quite a lot of them were dead. I think there were
How were they represented at lunch?
Well, they didn't answer their invitations. I think there were about 25 of us here, and I remember there was one guy that nobody knew who he was. And it sort of transpired sort of over the opening drinks that he was there by accident. And the palace office had clearly been trying to track somebody down, but they managed to find somebody with the same name with a similar address.
Who had no idea why he was there.
I think somebody went and asked him, how many winners did you ride for Her Majesty? And he went, none. I've never sat on a horse in my life.
Please tell me he was like 6'6". And
No. He was a charming elderly gentleman. And all I remember is
I bet she loved that.
The Queen Mother thought this was absolutely hilarious and went over to him to apologise for accidentally being invited to the wrong lunch. I mean, as if he's really going to mind. He just thought he'd won the lottery. He was just being invited for lunch by Her Majesty the Queen to celebrate the Queen Mother's 400th winner. And she went out of her way to make sure that he stayed for lunch and was very much a part of it, and she thought it was absolutely hilarious.
did you give a speech or anything at the lunch? Or
thanking her
it was a long time ago.
What were the celebrations like when?
It was nearly 30 years ago.
What were the celebrations like when they won, though? What did you get special notes from the Queen Mother, or gifts?
Yes, no gifts. No, not gifts. No, she was just very appreciative and utterly charming. And you get beaten on a horse for her. She fully understand. She understood the game.
So she was a good loser as well as a good winner.
Very important in racing.
Not like
You're
you.
a good loser.
Not
You
like
get a lot of
you.
practice at it.
Well, I've seen that on your website, and it says something like, if you're a bad loser or a slow payer, don't get in touch or something.
God, is that
I tell you
still
what
on
it
there?
says on it.
Yeah.
I tell you what it says on it. It says overrated jockey, underrated trainer.
No. That's on
Twitter.
my Twitter handle. But I think on the website it says, always looking for new business. But please don't contact me if you are looking for gambling information, a bad payer, or what did I say? I actually can't
Slow
remember.
payer or a bad loser.
Slow payer, bad loser, or
Good
looking for
research,
gambling
Kate.
information.
But my sources tell me that you are a very good trainer, in fact. So
Well, you're right there, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, your sources are good.
And that you've actually trained one Roya and Kate when
yes, I
she
did.
was a jockey, which is incredible feat, Roya, and I'm so impressed that you did this. When you raced in the Magnolia Cup. So
Yes.
tell us about what it's like to be on a horse.
Well, first of all, I will tell you exactly who is responsible for that. Donal McCabe is responsible for that, because
Okay,
when
he's getting dragged into it now.
when I was approached to do the Magnolia Cup, I was let's just say I was undecided, and
this is a really high-profile thing. It's for charity. And
it's at Goodwood.
Yeah.
This
is huge.
You have to get incredibly fit. You have to learn how to ride racehorses, which, as Jamie will come on to, I found quite challenging. And I went and had lunch with Donal as he was about to leave Buckingham
We were
Palace.
all weeping.
And I said I had been approached to do it, and I wasn't sure. It was way out of my comfort zone. Not sure I should do that. And Donal said, over second glass of champagne maybe,
Well, possibly.
he said, you got to do it. He said, imagine the flash of the silks as you go past the post. Imagine what an adventure that will be. So I blame you for everything that followed afterwards. But actually, it was one of the best experiences of my life. I loved it. And it was quite a lot of hard work, as the trainer will tell you, because I literally was clueless. I thought I knew horses. I really didn't when I arrived at Jamie's.
So what do you have to do to get jockey fit, to become a jockey?
Well, I've trained a few girls for this race, and they all come in at different starting points.
I came in at minus.
I would have to say that I've never had anybody that has worked as hard and tried as hard as Roya.
Oh.
The first few weeks, I really thought we were going to fail, but thankfully Roya started in good time, so we had enough time to mould her. And now Roya, I would say, is a very proficient rider of a racehorse, from being a fairly moderate one to start with.
Fairly moderate in Jamie language means crap.
I wasn't allowed to swear on the Kate and Roya show, but you are. What? No, Roya worked very, very hard. And we'd planned it very carefully, but sadly she did actually make a huge cock up on the day. And I feel like we've got a bit of unfinished business, because I think Roya should
Do it again.
ride in another charity race.
I would
And
love
this
that.
time we won't get it wrong, because she deserves to win one of these, because actually nobody has worked harder than Roya.
Oh.
It's a huge amount of gym work.
That's
and
the only
stuff,
nice
isn't
thing
it?
Jamie's ever said
Yeah,
in
there
the
won't
year
be
and a half
another
I've
one,
known
all
him. Back to the Queen Mother, because my sources tell me she used to occasionally just ring you up just for a gossip, Jamie. Come on. What were those
I
gossips
can't
like?
remember. What do we say? I don't recall.
Yeah.
I don't recall.
I have no recollection of that.
That's it. I have no recollection. Who was it that said that?
Well, Donal, you worked for the late Queen for quite a few years. You shared a strong interest in racing because you did join the Palace from Ladbrokes.
I did, yes. Yeah.
Tell us what it was like working for someone who had such a strong interest in horses and racing.
Well, I soon knew that my level of knowledge was, shall we say, minuscule compared to Her Majesty's. So I didn't try to trade on it at all.
Tell me, isn't there quite a fun anecdote about your first interview with her?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say,
that?
I'd been offered the role, but before you sort of formally offered it, you go along to meet Her Majesty, as was, and I went to Sandringham, and I was taken up by the private secretary.
You see the giant sculpture of Estimate.
Yes, I did see that somewhere. Yeah, and I went up and I had a brief chat with Her Majesty. She asked me not questions, but just sort of, I think, just to check the cut of my jib, really. And then at the end of that, it was clear that the conversation was over, so I sort of backed away while the private secretary...
How do you know, Donal, when the conversation's over with the late Queen? You just know.
The late Queen has had millions of conversations with her. She's an expert at letting you know the conversation is over.
So you're backing out of the
so
room.
I sort of discreetly
bowing.
stepped back, and while the private secretary went just to explain a few things, conversation about work, and all that was in the room were lots of portraits of horses. So, I mean, I'm naturally a nosy person, so
Yes,
I
you
thought, well,
are.
I'll just start looking at some of these. And then, sort of unbeknown to me, the Queen had just sort of sidled up to me and said, oh, that's of Oriole at the Derby, just before he goes out, which was the first time she had a runner in the Derby in 1954. Sadly came second, but a Royal Ascot winner. And so we just chatted about the picture.
And you thought, I've got this job in the bag.
No, I think
Nailed it.
even after 3.5 years doing it, I always thought I didn't have the job in the bag at all. But it was a lovely moment, and I think it's just, I was interested. I knew a little bit about racing, enough to know that it was the parade ring and that the jockey was being given instructions before the race.
So I always found, whenever I saw the late Queen on engagements with horses, she came to the Household Cavalry once with the now King, and I saw her at a couple of other horsey engagements. She always looked, she smiled solidly for an hour. She looked at her happiest around horses.
Yeah, we for the Platinum Jubilee, we released some footage from the Royal Stud of her with John Warren, looking at some of the yearlings, I think they'll have been, so forgive me, I've got that wrong. And you could just see that she was completely happy, a lady in her late 90s, but just at one with the horses.
And is it right that the Racing Post was the first thing that she used to read? There's all these stories about the Racing Post having brought to her on a silver platter.
I refuse to do marketing for the Racing Post, much as I love them. So I think it's fair to say that the Queen's knowledge of racing was because she absorbed it from many sources, including television and the Racing Post, certainly.
So we were chatting the other day, Jamie, and you were asking me about how much you thought whether or not the King and Queen were going to come every day. You were very pleased to hear that they would, and you said racing needs them. Why does racing need the royal patronage? Why is that important?
Well, I'm sure racing would survive without them, but we just become another nation like everywhere else, and I think we've got a lot of unique selling points in this country. But a huge one is the royal family's involvement. Some of the nations we're competing against don't even have a royal family, let alone one that's involved in the sport. So they're a big draw. If you look, so there's a huge international crowd here. I've got clients over from all parts of the world, and one of the reasons they come isn't just the horses, it's the whole sense of the whole atmosphere here, the fact that we can stand here and His Majesty is standing there, and it all seems like we're sharing one passion. And I think that is what really this country has that other countries don't have. And internationally, I'm pretty sure that our industry would suffer if the royal family were not involved.
I was speaking last week to John Warren, the racing advisor to the Majesties, and he was saying that I mean, he was delighted that the King and Queen have shown so much enthusiasm for it in the last year or so, but he was also saying that this week is a very important time for the King behind the scenes to meet a lot of people from around the world in racing and make those connections, and that's sort of important for the racing industry going forwards.
So what sort of meetings will they be having while they're here, the royal family? We talked about the social elements to them, but first question for both of you, will they be meeting with the owners, the other owners?
Well, I've never been invited to the Royal Box here, so I have no
we'll
idea what's going on.
We'll have a word, Jamie.
Well, we're in the same boot. Neither am I.
And does that relationship continue with the late Queen and the King and Queen, with you and your training? And
Well, no, I sadly don't train for any of the family and never have. I only rode for the late Queen Mother. But, remember here today, there will be, leaders of countries here. And I'm sure, some of them will have their own boxes up there, but I'm sure there will be all sorts of communication going on between His Majesty and various other heads of state.
But one of the things,
diplomacy continues at Royal Ascot.
Yeah, well, and when you can do that over a shared passion of the sport, kind of, soften things up a bit, doesn't it?
what is it about racing you think that the royal family are so passionate about? Why has there been this extraordinary connection for centuries?
Well, it is a sport of kings and queens.
And queens.
Yes.
And queens.
I was getting there. Not for the first time. My sentence has been finished. No, I think it is the sport of kings and queens. You can imagine some people saying, "Oh, it's out of touch," but racing is an incredibly popular sport. Even from my time when I worked for Ladbrokes, this is like the most popular, not participation sport, but sort of followed sport. Followed by all sectors of society. So I think with the Royals being involved, it's very much they've got an interest like everybody else. They are human. They just happen to be able to own horses or get horses, shall we say, from working with the overseas people that, as Jamie says, where the cachet of them being involved attracts people into the country, and soft diplomacy most certainly takes place.
But it slices through any society divides or any political divides. Or, you see here, you've got horses owned by some of the richest people in the world, owned by monarchs, owned by rulers, and you've got horses owned by a guy who has a corner shop. And what brings those people together is this sport, this sport doesn't judge anybody. It's very accepting, and where people share their passion, they don't care where they came from, they don't care who they are. Racing will just overrule all of that.
That's really interesting, because some people might think it's quite elitist because you've got all the top.
It's not elitist at all. It's the most.
And you've got everybody who can put a bet on, whether it's someone in the bookies or can watch it on the
There are barriers to
television.
entry. There are barriers to entry, and the main barrier to entry is it's not cheap. But
the 12:20 train from Waterloo to Ascot today was life's rich tapestry.
Well, I tell you what, wait until the train backs, because you're going to see it all happening there after they've had a few drinks.
I think what you mean, Donal, is all life is here.
Yes, it's
But isn't that marvellous?
But that is the point.
Isn't that fantastic?
There are people in top
Tell
hats
me
and tails,
about
people in
the
suits.
silks so we know last year we had the King's silks. The jockeys will wear the silk of that monarch. How are those silks chosen? Who picks the colours? Because, as a kind of gambling kind of idiot, I don't know anything about it. I pick all the horses according to what colour the jockey's wearing, frankly.
Okay.
So how do the monarch silks get chosen?
I don't know how they were originally chosen, but they've been historical for an awful long time. So that basically the jockey wears the silks of the owner. So
does the King choose which colour he's going to have?
No, the King has his set of
Purple
colours,
and red.
which he inherited from Her Majesty.
Right.
And they are probably the most famous colours in the world. Whenever a jockey puts them on, I'm sure they get a huge sort of sense of pride. And they are probably the best known colours in the world. And I don't know, you could maybe answer this, how long they have been the royal colours. I would imagine a couple hundred years.
So when you used to ride for the Queen Mother, Jamie, and not to disparage any of the other owners you used to ride for, but was there a little extra when you got into the Queen Mother silks? That sounds wrong, actually.
A little extra?
When you used to put on the Queen Mother silks, you're like, yes, I'm riding for a royal owner. That's an extra bit of cachet as a jockey.
It was an honour, and it was something that, you know, I'd grown up watching racing and watching the Queen Mother's horses winning a lot of races, never dreaming that one day I would ride a horse wearing them.
How did you first come to ride for her? How come she
I
picked
don't
you?
know, she didn't.
Because you were sort of half okay.
Some trainer decided that I should ride a horse. I don't think,
brilliant.
you know. I'm not sure. You know, she would have been the model owner. She wouldn't have interfered too much. You know, the trainers would have been allowed to run the operation, but she had an understanding, and she only had horses with people that she fully trusted, that they would make the right decisions and do the right jobs.
How many winners did you ride for her?
Not many. I was only at the end. I was like the dregs of the last bits of the 400, you know.
You did win the Welsh Grand National, though.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did.
What's that? What relevance does that have to
It's quite a big
Majesty?
race. You're doing yourself down, Jamie.
No, I won a lot bigger races than that, Roya. Just come on.
Don't worry.
Do your homework.
We've already got all the Cheltenham winners in the intro.
All right, okay.
What goes through your mind when you're ready to go? I can't imagine. It just looks like scary beyond belief. What is the mindset when you're just about to go? You're there. You're waiting.
Well, that's probably why it's a young man's sport, because, you know, the thing that has to, you know, being a jump jockey is quite dangerous. You are going to get hurt. You hope you're not going to get permanently hurt, but some have, some do. The overriding will to win, the fear of failure, it has to be the dominant emotion. And I think people give up the sport when the fear of getting hurt overrides that. And I think if you ever get down to the start on a horse and the fear of getting hurt, the fear of hitting the ground and coming back in the ambulance becomes too strong, well, that's when you really should be giving up. So, yeah, you have to just get yourself into the right frame of mind to do it. But it's like any sportsman. You know, they are the elite sportsmen in any sport are just slightly different. You know, they have almost like an obsessive, like they'd rather die than get beaten. And if you don't have that, you won't make it in any sport. And, you know, that probably to some degree is what differentiates between the people who nearly make it. Ability is probably less of an impact on that than mentality.
That's what Olympians say. That's really interesting.
Is it? Oh, well, good. Oh, maybe I heard
Ever
one of them say it one day.
Sadly, I might have the mental capacity, but the physical talent for any sport is beyond me. But I do
Darts.
think it's something for your mental game for your next race.
My next
It's
race.
clearly what
Well,
your trainer is telling
Can
you.
you do it with a GoPro and then we can put it on the
Well,
on the YouTube?
I tell you what, Jamie's right on that in terms of sort of the injuries, because I did have quite a bad fall in February
You did.
and lost.
She flopped off and broke a tooth.
Were you there when it
lost a tooth.
happened?
No, it was
No.
reported to me though.
Oh.
It wasn't Roya's most impressive bit of riding.
Flopped off. That's one.
I love your all sympathy.
No, you get no sympathy, but no, I'm channeling the mental game. Don't
You
I?
have to go for it.
I'm going to do another race.
You have to
I'll
go
do
for
another
it.
race. If
You-
Jamie can steer me in the right direction, I'll do another
Roya,
race.
I would be delighted to train you for another race.
All right, it's on record. It's
okay.
on record.
Yeah.
Which
gonna
one?
happen.
Which one shall I go
No,
for?
we'll find one. We'll find a charity race that we'll get you into, and we'll. I think I need to prep you a bit better this time. We did a lot of work, but we were incomplete in the end because you completely cocked up the start.
Yes, as you've said. To me, every
Jamie's terrifying.
every time I've ever been to Lambourne over the last year, you've reminded me, Jamie. Never to be forgotten.
I wish I'd met Jamie about 3 years ago. I could have channeled my inner Jamie when dealing with you sometimes. I'm really regretting this.
Honestly. Oh dear.
The racing world.
So-
The hard knocks. There you go.
As a trainer, Jamie here, apart from winning races, what are the objectives? Is it lots of schmoozing? Is it?
Yeah, look, this is a big week for us every year. You know, I've a fair few international clients. Some of them I don't see from one Ascot to the next, so it's a chance to catch up. It's a kind of aspirational week. You know, it can really, you know, it bites people's attention, it gets their attention, and obviously I need to keep my stables full. And I need to increase my spending power annually so that we can potentially buy a better class of animal that can come here and really compete.
And how much is that? How much does a horse like that cost?
Well, that's
Classified.
No, look,
a $7 million question.
there are horses here that cost 10,000 quid, and there are horses here that have cost 10 million.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, the Qataris have come in and spent an awful lot of money this year. I think they've got 28 runners. That's the Emir of Qatar, Wasnan Racing, and it'll be very interesting to see how they get on. You know, they've obviously got the deepest pockets in the world, and they're coming here to try and get a winner. But you know, they're going to need 28 shots at it. It just shows how hard this game is. You know, we're bringing horses here that realistically, if you think of it in terms of a European Football Championship, we're not even in the box. I mean, you know, there's no penalty kicks. Some of these are being shot from outside of the box, and a couple of them being shot from our own half. You know, we need a lot of luck this week. We're coming here with relatively cheap animals. Most of them are other people's cast-offs, and we're trying to punch above our weight.
And like the royal family, as we've been discussing, the heritage and the late Queen Mother and the Queen and the King, it's a family affair for you because your daughter Safi is one of the rising stars of flat racing.
Sadly, it is now a family affair, yeah. I mean, it was
We're
just
talking
my
about-
domain for many years.
We're
and
talking, of course, about Safi Osborne.
Yeah. I have 3 very nice children, and then I've got a girl, who is the youngest, obviously, and was the only one who she won the genetic lottery in the first place, because believe it or not, the boys are 6'3", 6'2", and 6'1", and she's 5'2". So I mean, where did that come from? You know, so she was the right shape to do this job, right size.
She's also very good, Jamie.
Yeah, she had a passion for it from... The boys were never interested. The boys went through a brief spell of liking racing in their teens when they used to come with me a little bit, and they thought that it was about drinking, gambling and girls. When they realised there was actually a little bit more to it than that, they soon lost interest. But Safi has stuck with it. She's been a sponge for the whole thing since she was tiny weenie.
How old is she now?
She's 22.
Great.
Who's going to end up being the better jockey, Osborne Senior or Osborne Junior?
Listen, it'd be great if it was her, but she's got a long way to go.
She's got a great trainer in her father.
Modest as ever.
And Donal, from the punter's point of view, what should we be looking out for today if you've never watched racing before and you're interested in Royal Ascot?
Enjoy it.
Just enjoy it.
It's just to Jamie's point about whether it's football at the European Championship. This is almost the highest level of the sport that you're going to get, and you are going to see some amazing athletes. You're going to see some of them get beaten. You're going to see some of them win. You're going to see some names that in the flat racing firmament will live long in the memory, but maybe not to the people, because they only tend to race for 2 or 3 years. And you could see a genuine superstar today. And that's the beauty of coming to something like Royal Ascot. You're getting the very best. It's like going to the 100-metre final at the Olympics, is how I would describe it.
And we've got the King Charles III Stakes this year. Any other differences you think that the King's going to bring in, Jamie, to Royal Ascot?
We are just very grateful that he's here, and Her Majesty is here, and the family are here, because they do bring so much to the meeting, and our industry really benefits from their involvement. So there was a fear, and I voiced this to Roya once or twice, that they could potentially not be as involved as the late Queen, and now it looks like that isn't the case, and their future in the sport looks secure, which is fantastic for us. It means an awful lot to the industry and therefore to the economy, and we are grateful as a sport that they are still very much involved.
Casting ahead, you do wonder whether King William will be quite so involved. He's never been a huge fan of racing. His preferred pony seems to be a kind of polo pony.
What about Harry? Would he? Oh, is he? Oh, no.
Donal's looking pained.
I didn't hear that.
You know Zara. She's very. I mean, there's potential.
Zara would be amazing
for Anne
the
and Zara to
sport.
take it on. Do you think?
Zara would be fantastic, and she really, she understands the game. At the end of the day, look, God, she's been to Olympics eventing. She's a brilliant horsewoman. She gets this sport. She's been around it all her life. The Princess Royal gets this sport. I mean, the two of them. I mean, I always thought that maybe if His Majesty didn't pick up the baton, maybe they would. But thankfully, that hasn't been necessary. But yeah, Zara would be fantastic. She is fantastic for the sport. She does an awful lot for Cheltenham.
Yeah.
I'd like to see her flat racing a little bit more.
She'll be here this week, I think, at
good.
least a few times.
Oh, good.
Hasn't it just been the week? All those winners for Jamie. We'll cut that, Beck, if he doesn't win.
We've had trooping, we've had Princess of Wales return, albeit perhaps briefly, to their royal story.
We had the King and Queen at Ascot almost every day, the King here almost every day except one, the Queen here every day.
Garter Day in the glorious sunshine at Windsor, now Ascot. Next week we're looking ahead to the inward state visit from the Japanese Emperor and Empress.
Pumped for the Japan state visit.
It's all happening. The sun is shining.
Donal, are you feeling like the Royals are back? It's been a rocky old time. You were there for some of the rockiest times. Does it feel a little bit more?
I don't think they ever went away. I think when we are in the bubble, we can all look at things too closely. I think that they've never gone away. I think they're incredibly stable institution that is incredibly popular and does one of the few things that binds quite a diverse country as we are, culturally in many ways, binds us together. I think it's never went away. It's one of the joys of working for.
Jamie's putting his hat back on.
Put the
Jamie,
top hat back
final
on.
Final wrap thoughts.
Is it Saturday?
And I carried mine off with such aplomb.
Sorry.
Go on, Jamie, say something. Come on.
Oh, what a great week. What a great week. Racing industry is so grateful to the royal family for their involvement this week. And let's look forward to next year.
We are very grateful
to you both.
We are very grateful to you both. Donal McCabe and Jamie Osborne, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's still Tuesday.
Yeah.